Okay, we'll go ahead and call the special meeting of the City Council, June 16th, meeting to order. Thank you for being here today. Mrs. Hoffman, please, would you do roll call?
Mr. Burke. Mr. Cahill. Ms. Kyle.
Mike.
Ms. Kyle. Yeah, we did not have it.
Through it. There. Now it says mute.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Can you hear us, Vicki?
When it has the when the line's through, it means they can't hear you. When the line's not through, that means that they
Let me go on.
Mrs. Kyle, are you here?
Mr. Skidmore. Ms. Sudkamp.
Here.
Ms. Cahill. Here. Mr. Meyer.
Here.
Ms. Skidmore. Ms. Pitts.
Here.
Mr. Nicely. Ms. Reckers.
Here.
Mr. Hermes.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Hoffman. I appreciate that. All right, we have legislation on the agenda.
Madam Mayor, before we get started, I'd like to, I move that we postpone the first reading of the ordinance of the wage scale for 2020 to the July 7th meeting as the first reading. That's item number 3 on the agenda.
Okay, there's a motion. Do I have a second? Mrs. Sudkamp?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Any discussion on this matter?
And what is this again? Just the,
The wage scale for 2020. We haven't had a chance to talk about the impacts of that yet.
now, is this the, this isn't the finance clerk, is it? No, okay.
So we have a first and a second on removing the wage scale 2020 as a first reading. Any other discussion?
Mr. Meyer, do you want to explain a little bit more why?
Well, there's two pieces. One, I know we just saw the details of that last night that were sent over. I'd also like to, have some discussion around, changing those pay bands and if that's the right number. I know right now we're automatically increasing the minimum pay for certain pay bands. So inherently, if someone got hired this year, they could be making the exact same as someone that's been here for a year. So I want to talk about those things and make sure that that's the right thing for us to do.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. We'll remove that item off of the agenda for this evening.
All right, first we have an ordinance. This is an ordinance of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, amending Erlanger Ordinance Number 2479 and the budget adopted thereby for the City of Erlanger for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2019 and ending on June 30, 2020. You can see by summary, as it relates to the amended budget, that the struck-through numbers are the ones that were budgeted. The numbers that are underlined next to it are the new amended budget. This is a second reading requiring a roll call vote.
Okay, do I have a motion that we adopt this ordinance as presented? Mrs. Reckers? Mr. Hermes? Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Reckers, Mr. Hermes,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore. I saw him on there a few minutes ago.
Mr. Skidmore, what is your vote?
Yes,
Did you say yes?
yes.
Thank you.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Yes?
Got you.
Ms. Sedkamp,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill, Ms. Skidmore,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ms. Kyle,
Mr. Cahill. Ms. Skidmore.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burke. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Cahill,
No, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, next we have an ordinance of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, adopting a budget for the City of Erlanger for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2020, and providing that no money shall be expended by or on behalf of the City of Erlanger except in accordance with that adopted budget. Attached is the proposed budget. This also is a second reading.
Okay, do I entertain a motion that we adopt this ordinance as presented?
Mr.
Mrs. Reckers?
Skidmore has arrived.
Mrs. Pitts is our second.
Who
Any
was the-
discussion? Mrs. Reckers? Any discussion on this matter? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and roll call.
Ms. Reckers, Mr. Meyer,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Cahill,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Burke. Ms. Kyle,
Ms. Kyle?
Ms. Skidmore.
We didn't hear Ms. Kyle.
I saw. Do you want her to redo it?
Just because it's a budget, I just want to make it very clear. Just if you could give us a thumbs up for yes or thumbs down for no, Ms. Kyle. I think she's frozen now.
What am I voting on? I hear.
Go ahead, Mrs. Kyle. I hear you.
Good, what's his name?
What is it? Mrs. Kyle?
All right, good.
Okay. Ms. Skidmore,
Mrs. Skidmore, what is your vote?
I can't hear her. I can't even hear you. I don't even know what I'm voting on.
So this is the
What am I
second,
voting on?
can you hear me?
I can't hear her.
Can you hear me? I don't see you, so I don't know if you can hear
I
me.
can hear somebody.
All right, so you are voting on the second reading of the budget.
I can't have these earbuds in. Yeah, sure, that's fine.
So that's a yes vote?
Yeah.
All right.
Ms. Sedkamp,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore, and then Mr. Hermes.
No, ma'am.
There's no Popo, he's supposed to answer.
All right, is that everybody?
Yes.
All right. Next, we have a municipal order. think this was emailed late. This was kind of a late addition. Do you want to go through and explain this, or do you want me to? All right. So, been an opening created in the finance clerk position because the current finance clerk is now moving to the front desk. And I think upon the advice and counsel of our esteemed treasurer, she has suggested that we probably reclassify this position accountant because it's probably more of an accounting role than it truly is a finance clerk role. So what this municipal order does is it literally changes the job description from finance clerk to accountant. It makes a few other tweaks, such as preferred instead of desired a bachelor's degree in accounting, and it allows the city to market the position probably truer to what it really is, which is an accounting position. So we do apologize for putting this on prior to discussing at a committee meeting, but this was an opening that frankly just happened here in the last few days. So it is a municipal order, so it would just need a motion and a second and a roll call.
Okay, I have a motion by Mrs. Pitts and a second by Mrs. Reckers. Any discussion on this matter? Okay.
Hold on, get my headset disconnected.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Hermes?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore? Ms. Sedkamp?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Kyle? Mr. Burke?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Kyle,
Ms. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burke,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Reckers?
Yes, ma'am.
Bless you.
so vete.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our discussion for this evening, which is the vacant council seat.
So we're going to
Mr.
move on to
Yeah,
our discussion for this evening, which is the vacant council seat. Okay. So we're
I
gonna
move we adjourn the regular session to move into executive session pursuant to KRS 61-810, paragraph 1, section F, to discuss the appointment of a member of a public agency. Yeah.
Need a second? Okay. Any discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carried, and we adjourn to executive session. We're going to time out the live stream, and we'll be right back.
No.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move we return back to our a regular special meeting. Sounds fair.
Okay. Mr. Herman's a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. I move we adjourn the special meeting.
A motion. And a second by Mrs. Reggers. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We'll go ahead and open up the City Council Committee meeting. And we will begin discussion on topic number 1, outdoor seating ordinance. Mr. Gary Meyer, that is your topic of conversation, so get it rolling.
Yeah, Mr. Gatlin, I was hoping you can help
Yeah.
me understand
Sure.
exactly.
So I'll tell you exactly what happened. So this ordinance is an ordinance we passed back in December 3rd, 2020 to be exact. And it was at the time an ordinance adding outdoor seating regulations for taverns and restaurants. It went through the PDS process. PDS made the recommendations. It was approved by KCPC. This body then, by ordinance, passed it. Problem was there were some typographical errors within that ordinance. For a variety of reasons, the version that made it into the ordinance was not exactly the same as the language that had been modified that night at the KCPC meeting. That night at the meeting, they made some tweaks and changes that were not necessarily in the original recommendations. And we just, frankly, the ordinance we read was not what was recommended and approved. So all this is an ordinance amending that ordinance, which takes out the typographical errors. And you can see that in section 10.16 NC and section 10.17 NC, we're just taking out taverns and outdoor seating in those sections. And then adding the business park zone, section D7. Again, nothing being done in this ordinance is different than what was blessed by KCPC. It just didn't translate right when we passed it in December. So it's really just a housekeeping issue. And to my knowledge, this has had no impact on anything as of this point, has it, Dave? So that's all that is. Okay. Yep, just like any other amendment.
You have a question?
No, just trying to figure everything out. I'm fine.
Okay. All right, so next item on the agenda is the facility study. Mr. Tonto. I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll move that to the July committee meeting. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Drees Development Garden. Jack,
Yeah, I'll talk about that. So, this is a development that is being proposed kind of at the Erlanger Edgewood line. It has made it through KCPC. KCPC, it was a very close vote, wasn't it, Dave? Very close vote. This is a project that seems to have a lot of angst and spirit amongst residents of both Edgewood and Erlanger, probably more particularly Edgewood, because where this development is, you primarily drive through Edgewood to get to. Since it was passed by KCPC, this body would have 90 days to overturn that recommendation. Otherwise, that recommendation becomes law and they get their zone change, which for all intents and purposes was really just a little bit of a change of the setbacks. And it was, for all intents and purposes, this development will go in whether they get the zone change or not. This just had some doings with setbacks. But the question that we have is Edgewood is doing a special meeting next week? Early next month, next week. They're doing a dedicated night inviting all of the people, and the turnout at KCPC was really large, and they're pretty much just allowing everybody to come up and voice and discuss it. If Edgewood shoots this down, it becomes moot for us anyway, okay? The question I have is, because there is such an appetite, and there is a lot of residents that are also emailing the city staff and potentially council, you know, we really have three options with this, and I just wanted to discuss what our three options are. Option number one is we do absolutely nothing, and the zone change happens as a matter of law, 90 days from whenever the date of the hearing was. And Edgewood's either going to kill this off, or they're going to approve it before that 90 days anyway. Okay, so that's option one, is this body does nothing. Okay? And understand if we do nothing, we pass the ordinance, but again, the project will change if Edgewood votes against it when they schedule their meeting. Option number two is that we have a vote, first and second reading of an ordinance, either overturning the recommendation of KCPC or approving the KCPC, and we do that solely relying on the record, meaning we would not allow any individuals to speak. We would just review the KCPC record, which is about 2.5 hours, pretty lengthy, and recommend the recommendations of PDS, and we would just take a vote. The third option, which is not something we have done a lot in Erlanger, but because of the temperature on this one, I think it would be where I would steer it if we want to have people speak. And that would be that we just go ahead and classify a new public hearing, and that we do it very similar to the way Edgewood's doing it, that we would have a dedicated night that would be a public hearing, that we would advertise as a public hearing. We would give Dries an opportunity to put on their entire spiel. We would give every individual that wanted a chance at the microphone a chance to speak, and then this body would go ahead and vote either up or down based on the recommendations. Yes, ma'am.
Can you please give me an exact location of where this will be?
Behind the go ahead.
This is Edgelander.
It's right behind Doe Run Lake.
Is it actually Edgewood or Erlanger that they'd be building those on?
Both.
It's on both.
Both. So they kind of drive through Edgewood and it's in both communities. That's right. So you go through Charter Oak to get to it. I mean, it's literally a spot on the hillside of Doe Run Lake that, at least when you're in the mayor's house, you kind of look back behind at it there.
How many houses do they want to put there?
But they're they're high-end homes. They're like 500, 800. I mean, it's going to be.
I mean, I personally like the option of one or two. I know there was a big hearing. Yeah, I mean, certainly we could do
One is a fine option. No, I'm just saying, here's what I don't want. Because this is kind of a hot button issue, I don't want to have, we're not really declaring a new public hearing, but we're going to let 5 or 6 people speak, right? I think we either go all in for an all-new public hearing, or we just let it ride out and see what happens. And I believe, and I know that Matt has had a lot more discussions with Edgewood, I think Edgewood's going to steer this ship on us anyway. Edgewood seems more passionate about it, I think because the road's going to Edgewood. Matt just thinks it affects them more, frankly.
We tried to trade on that land a long time ago. For the Kmart. And I think that deal's still on the table, right? We'll trade that for Kmart.
So all we're looking for is just direction, what council wants to do, whether they want to do option 1, 2, or 3, or punt the issue to see first what Edgewood does and then kind of decide. But we have 90 days from, and I apologize.
I think it was early May. It was early May. It was in May.
So
yeah. We're 45 in.
Yeah, so I mean, we got to do something in July.
I know, I personally have not been contacted by anybody on this. You know, I mean, nobody's contacted me to complain. I don't think that's true. know it's going to be a issue. But I have watched the meeting that fact. I was just asking Mr. Hahn how
Oh, that one. I mean, she is our representative.
Hey, you need to speak in the microphone. They're not hearing you online.
Hello, test.
Grab a mic.
Okay, so one of the things I had asked Mr. Hahn was how Diane Brown, who is Erlanger's representative, how she had voted on this issue. And he said that she had actually voted against it. And he added that Edgewood actually voted against it as well. So it is kind of an interesting issue. The two cities that it affects voted against it, but that KCPC overall voted for it. So it's going to be very contentious.
It was close, maybe 8-6. Okay, whatever, it was close. Now,
We will have a lot of angry people, I guess.
and that's why I brought this up.
That if given the state of the virus and things like that, and the fear, I don't know that it's the best idea to try to invite that here when what Mr. Gatlin is saying is the development's going to happen regardless. They can build on the parcels regardless. I agree that I think it's probably best that Edgewood steer it. And this is probably one of the few circumstances where I would be willing to just ride it out and see.
We will update you at the July meeting as to what happens. I'm pretty sure that Edgewood will be having their special night before we begin, but we'll make sure of that.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the TIF area number 2. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want to wait till?
This really is more Mr. Kramer's issue. I don't think there's anything urgent on the issue. Is there, Dave? I mean, you want to talk about, I mean, we can talk about it. It's all you. You're as much a part of this as I am. I've talked too much already.
There we are. If you remember when we did the TIF district for, this is going back 2 or 3 years, the TIF district up at the old Showcase Cinema property. When we did that, we divided it. We also did a TIF District 2 that took in all the surrounding property that abutted that. The things like where Atlas Air is now being built, the vacant property in front of where Beacon Orthopedic is. That was then what was classified as the TIF District number 2, which means that 80% of the tax dollars we receive go into that TIF. After we got looking at that and the different businesses that are going in, we kind of felt that we ought to disband just that TIF district. The TIF district, the Erlanger Commerce Center, or the old Showcase Cinema property, would stay as a TIF district. But to eliminate the TIF District 2 and just let that be the normal zoning as it is developing now, with just the current zoning that is there, without having to offer those TIF funds. Do you got anything to add to that, Jack?
No, I think, I mean, I was a part of this when we initially did it, and I think the idea was we wanted to stimulate that whole area, and we worked to deal with the developer, that their attorney, Jim Parsons, would go ahead and put that TIF on both spots. But I do agree that now that we've kind of, as it is developing, and as we look at the payback of that TIF, it probably is not in the city's best interest to maintain that TIF2 district.
Yes.
So it would be just our request that we take that TIF2 away.
Turn off the mic. I'll give my 2 cents on it. I don't know that it's really fair of the city to just disband that. There's a reason why you don't see a lot of TIF districts around. It's because it takes an incredible amount of work on the developer side to set it up and to start it. A typical TIF district costs around $250,000 to set up. And we have, I mean, the city's already benefited from that. You know, with Coke and Van Mel and Novalex. You know, but ultimately the person who is trying to push that is the developer who set it up, and that's Nair. I've never heard of one just getting canceled. I'm sure it's happened, but I think we should probably make sure that we involve Nair in that discussion and give them a say before we just go ahead and decide on that.
I mean, Dave, if you want to answer that, we have.
We've talked to Nair, and Nair has no problem with this, as they are the developer where Atlas Air
Yeah.
is going, and so they're aware of it, and that they're fine with,
Yeah.
because they really don't have any.
And frankly,
Skin in the game.
their attorney is Jim Parsons.
Is Tim.
And he feels that, no, it's not necessary, and it's probably in everyone's best
Probably in
interest
the
to
best
go ahead and
interest to
disband it.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have been on board but for Jim Parsons and Nair being on board.
Correct.
So, and some of it has to do, and this is a little complicated for this time of night, but some of it has to do with the funding and the payback of the TIF and how it's all, it's just, it's not needed anymore on that parcel, on TIF 2. Yeah, it has no impact on TIF 1.
So what do we need to do to proceed?
We'll have an ordinance ready for the next meeting.
Okay, any other discussion on that matter? Okay, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn. Put your mic.
I have to ask for an updated interlocal agreement between the city and the Erlanger-Ellesmere school resource officers. The only change other than dates is on the page 3, section 5. This was a request by the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council from last year. A resolution is needed to be adopted that authorizes the mayor to enter into this interlocal agreement.
We're on top of it.
Okay, knew you would be.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I entertain a motion that we adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Mrs. Reckers, sorry, and Mr. Meyer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carried. Have a good evening.